this one. Good morning, everybody. Although some of you, it's already late afternoon in the UK, and this is the Natural Wellness Academy, and we're having a webinar, and I probably would put this in our spirit module because it's such an interesting topic. Years ago, actually, Joanne, I took a little workshop. It was just a very short workshop on animal communication through the American Board of Hypnotherapy, and I've always been fascinated, and I would love perhaps next year to offer a certification program through the Natural Wellness Academy, because I know that there are a lot of people who would love to have this skill. So I would like to know more about how you got started. I know in your story you said that you had a pet that was ill and you found a way to communicate, and that kind of opened up this whole interspecies communication. So I would like to hear all about it.
That's lovely. Shall I do it so that we have a chat, or shall I just start with my slides? Because I'm kind of putting it all in as part of, you know, how
that would be
about.
Perfect.
Yeah.
You've got the floor.
Yeah. Thank you. Because I always think it's nice with the slides because, you know, there's pictures and there's stories. So, so just bear with me while I do the technology bit and share it, and then just make sure everybody can see it. Can you all see the slides okay? Lovely. Okay, so yeah, so thank you so much for joining me in this webinar. I really appreciate being invited to speak about animal communication. So today's webinar will be very much an introduction to what is animal communication, also known as animal telepathy, and also known as interspecies communication. I'll briefly talk about how it works. And yes, we'll have a little practice too, so that you too can start to understand or explore how it feels when you're actually telepathically connecting with your animal. So that would be my wish that at the end of the webinar, we can cover these three things and you'll have a clearer idea of, you know, animal communication. So animal telepathy will enable you to connect with your animals without being in the same room as them. And that is the aspect that I absolutely love about animal telepathy. And just think about the users, you know, the benefits of not, you know, needing to be in the same room as your animals when you want to communicate with them, but more about that as I go on. So you can use a photograph, you know, and if you get yourself a quiet space where you can focus your mind, and with your natural ability, that's the key. You know, animal telepathy, animal communication doesn't require for you to be a master of, in some kind of expertise. We all have that natural ability, and just, you know, telepathically tune into your animals and communicate directly with them. So the animals in this slide, I'm very fond of because I've communicated with all of them. And every time I have this slide on, they always say to me, introduce us. So, you know, you're starting to get a sense that I hear them. And so, yes, I'll always introduce them. So there's Felix, who's the horse, Gigi, who's the cat, Chaplina, who's the dog, and Mr. Cockerel, who doesn't want to be named, but just to be known as Mr. Cockerel, and Sprite, the pixel. So a little bit about me. I am delighted and honored to be able to call myself an interspecies communicator. I like the term interspecies communication. It was originally coined by Penelope Smith, who pioneered animal communication. And she uses the term interspecies communication. And what I like about using that is because it reminds me that we are all species, animals, humans, so that when I'm communicating with an animal or an animal is communicating with me, I'm very aware that it's species to species. I also am an energy intuitive, and what that means is that because of my work over the years with communicating with animals, I've learned that I can actually help them even more when it comes to health issues. And I studied with Tina Ziand, the subject of medical intuition, which means within my animal communication, I can communicate with the animals about how they're feeling, about their health. And then by using the skills that I've learned in medical intuition, I can explore much deeper what their body needs. I'm also a mentor, and I support people who want to follow the path, either as a professional animal communicator or just to enhance their own practice if they're already an animal practitioner or a healer. And I'm a mum to 3 dogs, Donnie, Mitch, and Mia. And I'm absolutely passionate about helping others to rediscover their intuitive abilities. And that is what animal communication has really taught me, is to really to get in touch with my intuition. So what I offer in my animal communication work is I offer one-to-one consults. I do this by email, phone, or video call. So I work mainly with a distance work. So I work using photographs. There are times when I'm asked to be, to go and visit the animal, but most of my consults are distance consults. I also hold webinar series for others to learn and practice animal communication. And I offer group and one-to-one mentoring sessions as well. So you can tell that if I can, I would just want everyone to be an animal communicator. And the reason I say that is because the animals want everyone to be an animal communicator. And this is my mission statement in a way. My ongoing wish is to assist animals in helping humans to better understand them, so that they and their owners can live in harmony and both experience the magic of sharing life together. So animal communication is very much about allowing us to understand our animals much better, to appreciate that they have a voice, to appreciate that they have opinions and feelings. And this is my dog, Donnie, endorsing my mission statement. I particularly love this picture because Donnie is the dog that got me into discovering animal communication. He is my first dog as an adult. And when I first got Donnie, I had no idea about animal communication or telepathy or, energy work with animals. And so I viewed my role as Donnie's guardian. Well, I viewed myself very much as his owner. And I wanted to be the best owner that I could be for him. And so I would enroll him in obedience classes. I would read all the books so that I would be this kind of perfect, parent to him. And in many ways, when I look back now with hindsight, and I'm looking back in hindsight with a, kind of a magnifying glass at what I was doing, I was really saying I wanted my dog to be perfect. And the reason I wanted him to be perfect was because it would then reflect that I was doing a good job and that he would be socially acceptable. I could take him everywhere and, he would just be this perfect companion. But of course, my Donnie didn't do most of it. I would take him to obedience classes and he would always do, I would say, do about 40% or 60% of what he needed to do. And, and leave me kind of hanging there for like the other bits, thinking, why isn't he getting it? What is it that I'm not doing right with him? Why does he, still continue to chase? Why does he continue to bark and, and all those things? And in time, what was happening was I was starting to feel as if I wasn't doing a good job because he wasn't behaving or responding, in a way that I wanted him to. And so before animal communication, I just found that what my relationship with Donnie was very much that I was responsible for him. I had to mold him. I had my agendas for him. And it didn't mean I didn't love him. It just meant that I just had this understanding that I was, in a way, totally responsible for how he felt, how he thought. Anyway, to cut a long story short, I continued to almost feel as if that I was always just a little bit short of the mark with being, the best parent that I could be. So over a period of time, Donnie had an ongoing issue, which was he would continually chew his paws. And as time went on, it got worse and worse and worse, and it would bleed. And it meant that there were times when he couldn't walk. And so the vets would tell me it was allergies. I would put all sorts of products on his paws. He would be given steroids, the whole works. And it just didn't stop. Got to the point, I think, for about I think after about 2 or 3 years, he ended up having to wear one of those plastic cone collars almost permanently. And I was getting really desperate. I'm thinking, there must be a reason for this. There must be something I can do to help him. And my relationship with him at that point became really fractious, because every time he chewed his paw, I'd be shouting at him. And I got really upset. I'm thinking, this is not how it's supposed to be. Why can't I help him? Anyway, I started, searching on the internet, as we would do when we're just desperate and we just need to help our animals. And I stumbled onto the subject of animal communication. And I watched a video about this, and I remember thinking, I never once asked Donnie what's wrong. I never once asked him how he felt, what was going on for him. And it was just that little thought. And I thought, I'm just going to try, because on this video, it showed, a little bit about how to tune into your animals and how to just, connect with them. And so I thought, I have nothing to lose. I'm just going to try it. And I just sat down with him and I just said to him, I'm really sorry, Donnie. I never asked you, how you felt and what it is that you wanted. So if you're able to tell me what it is that is going on with you and what you need, just tell me. And there was a part of my brain that went, oh, this is ridiculous, yet because I just needed to find out from him what was going on. So very subtle. It was very subtle. I felt this tingling in my back, like a little twinge. And it was so quick. And I remember thinking, did I just imagine that? And I thought, I'm at a point now, doesn't matter if I imagine these things, I'm just going to go with it. And he never showed me that he had pain or back pain, because that was what I experienced just very quickly. But I thought, I'm going to go with it. And so I started him on some supplements. And I, did some massage for him. And within 3 days, he stopped chewing his paws. I remember thinking, this is a fluke. I'm sure he's going to start again in a couple of days or a week. And my best witness at that time was my partner at that time, who didn't really believe in any of this. But he got so frustrated, with Donnie and the situation, that he'd get quite, angry a lot of the times. But Donnie continued day after day after that. He just didn't chew his paws. So I thought, this must mean something. And that's the little story behind how I then decided to explore animal communication, because I thought, if Donnie knew what was wrong with him and I couldn't hear what he had to say, how frustrating that must be for him. So I vowed to him from that day onwards, I will always listen to him. And I will make sure that other animals have that opportunity too. So the 3 main reasons why people seek animal communication, over the years, I've discovered this. I call it the 3 C's. Usually it's with a sense of curiosity. There's so much more known about animal communication now than it used to be. Curiosity, and also if you're concerned about your pet's behavior or health, a little bit like my situation that I had with Donnie. And also where animal communication is invaluable is if you're experiencing a crisis situation with your pet. So I'll go through each one so that you have examples of, what that means. So when it comes to curiosity, we know the classic, things that we think, probably all of us might have thought this, that we look at them and go, oh, I wish you could talk. And now I understand that our animals are probably looking at us going, I wish you could listen. So, animal communication is 2 ways. And these are kind of some of the examples of the questions I am asked to communicate with animals, So say for a dog, why do you bark each time the neighbor's car pulls into the drive? Just really curious. Why does he do that? And these are real questions. And I can remember the animals that these questions are linked to it. So the first question, why do you bark each time a neighbor's car pulls into the drive? The story actually relates to a dog that actually hardly ever barks, but every time the neighbor's car pulls into the drive, he'll bark. So the guardian was very curious. I had another question the other day, why do you only want to drink from the water that's outside and indoor? So these are kind of general, why do you do that? If only you could talk, I'd be able to understand. And then I had another one where they said, you know, why does this dog refuse to walk further than a certain point during our morning walks? You know, it's really confused the guardian. It's like, you know, you're happy to go out, but the minute we hit a certain point, you know, you just don't want to go any further and you're pulling me back. You know, she knew that he wasn't afraid, but again, so these are kind of the questions that we can ask animals. And then a very popular but obviously important question is, are you happy? How do we know our animals are happy? You know, and we love asking them, you know, do they know how much we love them? So these are just examples of the things that we can ask our animals in an animal communication. So I'd like to kind of get you to start feeling intrigued, you know, as I'm saying this, is like, well, how do you know? How do you receive the answers? So I'll give you an example of a curiosity one. This is Pixel, who I communicated with years ago. He was found near a shopping center and he was brought to a vet surgery. And the vet nurse on duty that day decided to adopt him. And she contacted me because she wanted to know how he came to be where he was found. And when I communicated and connected with Pixel, he was such a chatterbox. He was so quick with his communication that I had to really try and keep up with him. He sent me so many images, words and feelings. And so you're starting to also hopefully get a sense that the way animals communicate with us is through imagery, through feelings, through words, through sounds, smells, taste, sensations, you know. So because he was so fast, I had to really keep up with him. But he was actually incredibly accurate with the way he described, you know, his situation. He showed me a white wire cage, and he also showed me a female. He never showed me the face. I just saw the body of a female. Showed me the boot of a car, and showed me that she was wearing like a kind of like a Macintosh. And now I had no, you know, information about Pixel and who rescued him, etc. But it turns out that the vet nurse, who's called Becky, she could verify that it was a female officer from the RSPCA that rescued him, and that Pixel was actually placed in the back of a van in a white carrier cage. So we can actually find out from an animal, you know, details to this level. So the kind of questions that people ask when they're concerned about their pets and their animals usually are linked to behavior, where there's stress and anxiety, and particularly where there are health issues. So again, popular questions are, how do you feel about other dogs and cats? Are you lonely? So these questions mean a lot to us, you know, to find out from them. Are you nervous of traveling in the car? You know, why do you bark at everything? I think barking has got to be one of the top questions that, you know, we want to ask our dogs. What are you frightened of when you're outdoors? I've made changes to your food recently. How do you feel about it? So you're getting hopefully an idea again that, you know, this having the ability to communicate with our animals shows us that we really care about how they feel. You know, we care about their perspective. So some stories about communications that around concern. So finding out if they're happy. You know, here's Scout, who is a Whippet cross, and he was adopted from rescue when he was about 6 months old. He's now 8 years old. He was born blind in one eye and has limited vision in his other eye. His guardian wanted to know, how does the world look to him? And when I received that question, I mean, it still gives me goosebumps, because how beautiful an experience it is for his guardian to know how the world looks to him. You know, without animal communication, or without using animal communication, you know, we might observe them. We might, you know, almost kind of guess how they might feel. But with animal communication, you can definitely hear it from the horse's mouth, as they say. And this is the story of Scout. A short kind of excerpt from the communication that I had with him. When I asked him how the world looked to him, he described to me how his sight was like having blinkers on, much like a horse. And the imagery he sent to me was literally of a horse with the blinkers on. And so he helped me to experience what it was like for him. He showed me that he uses all of his other senses to see the world, and that they are very important to him, especially his hearing. And again, the way he conveyed that to me was suddenly my sense of hearing became very sensitive. It became very strong. And he said to me he was very proud of his hearing. And what he did there to give me that sense was send to me an emotion of pride. And in his own way, he described his guardian as being his guide human. And I thought that was really lovely. He gave me the words guide human. So it kind of turned it around to, you know, how we view dogs as guide dogs. So he viewed his guardian as his guide human. He even called her his sat nav. You know, he especially loved her tone of voice and how she described the world as she sees it, and she paints the picture for him, basically being his eyes. So when I relate that to back to his guardian, she said to me, yes, I do that. I describe everything that I see when I'm out with him. And you know, what that meant for his guardian was everything that she is explaining to him or describing to him, she now knows, because of his communication, that he absolutely appreciates that and can really be helpful for him. So she's not left wondering, you know, am I doing the right thing? Am I not? And also around kind of concerns to do with behavior. So here's another little story. I like sharing stories because I think it demonstrates animal communication better than if I was just trying to explain it.
Oh, absolutely.
Oh, thank you. So this is a story of China and Jasmine, and a very memorable communication because of the situation whereby the guardian was at a point whereby she was being put under a lot of pressure by well-meaning friends and family to rehome one of the dogs because they were constantly fighting. And so what I did was I communicated with each individually just to get a sense of who they are individually. So finding out from China, you know, what her characteristics are like and her personality, and same with Jasmine, because they are two individuals. And so I got a sense of who they are. And basically what they said to me was that it was a personality clash. Simple as that. You know, they didn't hate each other. They didn't not want to be under this with the same family. They just had this personality clash. And really, as far as they were concerned, it wasn't something that they wanted to improve. Actually, it was more China. China was more stubborn. She didn't want to change it. And with that insight, I asked them if one of them wanted to leave the family home. And both were adamant they didn't want to leave the family home. And both were also very clear that they didn't want the other one to be rehomed. Now that's fascinating, isn't it? So I came up with, so, you know, the guardian and I, therefore, having this insight, came up with a plan that it was fine to keep them in separate quarters. She had a massive house. So it wasn't like she was in a small house. And China loved being upstairs. She loves being in the bedroom. She wasn't as sociable as Jasmine. Jasmine just loves to be very sociable with other dogs, etc. So, and also I found that China actually had some health issues, you know, physical health issues. So the guardian managed to get some chiropractic work for China to help her feel better. And it meant that with management, with understanding, they both could remain in the same home. It meant that they didn't have to be rehomed, but it meant that they didn't want to be in the same room as each other. And so, and they have other, you know, dog companions. And so this is the happy outcome, that they could remain in the same home. They were with their siblings that they would get on. It was just the two of them that, you know, didn't want to be together. So without animal communication, I believe that China and Jasmine's guardian would have in time felt such a lot of pressure about rehoming one of them, and probably spent the rest of her life you know, feeling sad and regretting that decision. So this is a lovely outcome. And so we come to me, I hold this very close to my heart, being able to help animals when they are in crisis. So usually when they're in crisis, we're talking about issues around end of life, where there's been an emergency surgery that's required, where the animals are missing. So some of the questions the guardians want to ask their animals are, why are you not eating much these days? Finding out from the animal how they're feeling, whether there's certain foods that they prefer, and just get that from their perspective, why they either choosing not to eat, or whether there's actually a physical reason why they're not eating. And yes, we all want to know whether they're in pain and discomfort. And there is a way of asking the animal to convey that to us. And particularly, we want to help the animal to feel reassured, especially if we're taking them to see the vet, whether that's just for, say, a checkup, or whether it's actually, to help them transition. It's very important to be able to communicate to the animal what is happening, so that they are not afraid, that they understand, and that we get to be able to, also hear from them how they're feeling about it all. And a lot of the times, animals are great support to us in times of crisis. They are wise. They do know what's going on. They can help us to make decisions too. And then, to me, a very precious question to ask our animal is, are there any places you would like to go, or things you would like to do before we say goodbye on the physical realm, memory building? And when it comes to being able to know what our animals need and want from us before they depart the physical realm, really can help just to ease the pain and the grief that we feel when we have to say goodbye. It doesn't take it away, but it means that we hopefully live with less of the what ifs. And that, to me, is what pushes me to do animal communication, is that if I can take away the what ifs for you when you're having to ask your animals what they need before they transition, then I know that I've fulfilled my kind of my desire for helping animals as well to express what they need. So here is beautiful Dexter. I have known Dexter for over a year, probably coming up to 2 years. And towards the end of his life, I had ongoing communications with him, weekly, at times daily, just checking with him how he feels. That was about probably 4 or 5 times that this guardian thought, this is it now, he's not going to make it. And I'll speak to Dexter and he'll say, oh, I'm just having a bad day, give me a day or so. And then the next day I'll get a phone call from his guardian saying, he's just got up and walked to have a pee in the garden. And we all know when our animals just look like it's just not happening, just doesn't look good. And then they get up to go to the garden to have a pee. It's worth celebrating. So Dexter was beautiful with his communication. He would express how he was feeling emotionally as well as physically, so his guardian could help him, ease his comfort. And I love that picture of him in the car with the harness, because he actually asked for it. He said that although he may not be able to go for long walks, he still loves being outdoors, and they would take him in the back of the car to his favorite places and just open the boot and just allow him to sniff the air and just have a lovely view. And some days he could stand and some days he couldn't. So it was precious that he could express his needs and desires. And this is a lovely feedback from Dexter's guardian, saying that Joanne's been along for the ride for a lot of Mr. D's short time with us and has been beyond invaluable. Her support and ability to not only pass on his messages, but also read between the lines and press him sometimes when he didn't want to be a bother and ask for what he really needed. Didn't just keep him with us for longer when he could tell us he wasn't ready to go, but enhanced his life at a time many people would have written him off. So I'm very grateful for that feedback. So I hope these stories give you a sense of excitement, as well as, you know, a deeper insight to what animal communication can really open up for us and our animals. So what I'd like is to give you a little sense of what that must be like to receive communication from our animals. I suppose we're kind of used to talking to our animals. We're used to being able to, you know, ask them questions, but very much animal communication is two ways. It's about being able to receive information from them. And we receive information through telepathy. And telepathy is very much about our senses, which is visual, sound, smell, taste, physical sensations, emotions, thoughts. So everything you already have within you. What it means is that we just have to allow ourselves to know that we can receive this information. So if you're very new to this, and you think, oh, I'm sure I've just imagined that. I want you to know that your imagination is the closest thing to intuition. So never write anything off when you think you've imagined something when you've asked your animal a question, because that is key. So the more you develop it, you'll receive more information and the information will come quicker. So the only difference between you and I at this point, unless you're a professional animal communicator, is that I've been doing this for years. And if this is just something that you're beginning to be interested in and starting, then you may find that the information might come a little bit slower to you, or you find that you might be kind of dismissing it. But while we're here, let's just have some fun. So one of the things I like to share with you, some of you might have heard of the term your mind's eye. And when I first heard this, I was thinking, what does that mean? You know, when somebody says, see with your mind's eye. And I'm thinking, what does that mean? You know, how do I relate to that? When an animal sends you imagery, it's usually you will see it with your mind's eye. So let me just introduce to you a little exercise that you can do to start to have a connection with your mind's eye. So take something that you can focus on. So, I mean, it could be that if you have your animal in the room or you have a person in the room, I want you to really study their face. Or if you don't have them in your room, so maybe have an object. So I'm trying to see if I've got an object in here. So if I take, for example, I've got a notebook, just be a notebook. And what I want to do is just really study this object. You know, every inch of it. It's almost as if I want to memorize, okay, this book I've got in front of me. So if you spend a few seconds just doing that, just really taking the detail. So obviously you've got your eyes open, so you're really studying the object. And just make sure you're feeling relaxed and you're calm, and hopefully my stories have kind of helped you feel, you know, nice and kind of relaxed. So really study the object just for a few more seconds, taking in every single detail. You don't have to memorize it in case maybe I'm picking up some information from one of you thinking, oh my goodness, am I going to have to memorize this and say it back? No, you don't. So just really look at the object, or if you have your dog or a person in front of you, just their face, just really almost drinking in the information. Okay. So now what I want you to do is close your eyes. Then I want you to bring that image of that object or that dog or that person that you were really focusing on. Just bring it to your mind. See if you can see either the outline of it or if it's very clear. And I want you to also just take a note of where it's appearing, i.e., is it appearing in the back of your eyelids, or is it appearing almost like straight in front of you but at a distance? Or can it be to the side, even behind you? So it's very quick. Okay, so you can open your eyes again when you're ready. So if you have the option of the chat box, or we can talk later, just make some notes about where you had that image. So if you didn't get anything, that's fine too, because this is something you can always watch the replay and try again. Okay, so that's where for me I see the image. So when I was really studying this notebook, and then when I closed my eyes, I could see it kind of at an angle where, so kind of to my right. So now I'm aware that when an animal sends me imagery, it's kind of coming from that position. Now, it doesn't always mean that's the only place I will see imagery, but when you're starting to trust your intuition, when you're starting to trust about receiving telepathic information, it's just kind of a guide to know, where you might be expecting the imagery to come into. So that's just one sense. Remember, we have 5, even 6 sense. Okay, so something else to try. When we're connecting with the animal and communicating with them, either in person or by photograph. I'll talk a little bit briefly about the reason why I like using photographs. When I'm in the presence of an animal and I want to communicate with them, I'm easily distracted. Either they're just so gorgeous, or they can be really naughty and they're just running around, so it's quite hard for me to focus, and I get, like I say, easily distracted. It's still possible to connect with them, but I like using a photograph because it means that any information that comes through, I know it's not because I've observed their body language, it's not because I've noticed things about them, literally any information that's coming through, I know will be telepathically from the animal. So in a kind of very simplistic way, and it is simple. It is simple. What it is that it's about our confidence and our ability to be quick. And animal communication is a language. View it like a new language. If I want to learn French and, I've never spoken French before, it's going to feel a bit stumbly, and I might be a little bit, impatient with myself when I'm trying to speak French with somebody who's very fluent in it. And animals are fluent in telepathy, so we can really learn from them. So the steps to preparing ourselves to communicate with an animal is by using the photograph or them in person. We focus on the eyes to connect with the animal, and we just ask permission. We say, may I have permission to connect and communicate with you? I always, let's say almost always, because there's always that 1% chance, almost always have the animal goes, yes, communicate with me. Because again, how does it feel? Imagine how it must feel if you live in a world where people don't really speak your language, and then you come across somebody who does, and they say, may I speak with you? You're like, yes, please. So whenever we want to communicate with animals using telepathy, they are always delighted that we can. And there's something called a heart-to-heart connection, where we connect with them heart to heart. So we drop our focus to our heart area, because the heart area is where we hold unconditional love. So when we communicate with an animal, it's without conditions, it's without agendas. It's genuinely to find out what they feel, what they see, how, what information they want to give us. So it's truly unconditional, hence heart to heart. So I always say, you imagine, a light coming from your heart center and sending that light to your animal's heart center. Or some people like to see a cord. Some people like to send a color, as long as you just visualize very simply that you're connecting heart to heart with your animal. And again, when we first start to want to communicate with an animal, we kind of think, oh, there's so many questions I want to ask them, but actually, when you're starting to learn what it's like to communicate with an animal, start by sharing images, sharing emotions and sounds and smells and tastes and sensations. It's a great way to start. before we start asking questions. Because sometimes when we ask a question to an animal, again, we can't help it. We're humans. We'll always have agendas. We'll always be, if I ask him that question, we might even have an expectation of what that answer will be. And it's not always what we think the answer will be, because it's from the animal's perspective. So if you're just starting as we are now, very lightly, we can share imagery, we can share emotions. And one of the ways to do it, say, for example, you'd like to, say if you have your animal in the room, actually, you don't have to have your animal in the room. You know where your animals are, or you have photographs of your animals. So see how it feels for you and what you receive. For example, if you wanted to send to them an emotion of joy. Okay, so the way to do is that you think of something joyful, something that brings you joy, and you experience that emotion come up in you, because it's, a thought will create an emotion. So think of something joyful, and then feel the emotion of joy. And then it's almost as if you're sending that emotion from your heart to your animal's heart. And then you wait and you say to your animal, I'm sending you joy. What emotion would you like to send back to me? Okay. And then you just wait and observe, because suddenly you might feel excited, say, and you're thinking, oh, where did that come from? I wasn't feeling excited a second ago. Trust that that's what your animal is sharing with you. So that, in its very kind of starting level, that is animal communication. And as I'm talking, I'm sensing probably that some of you are already experiencing this with your animals, but maybe you didn't term it as animal communication. So the same with smells or taste. Now, smells and taste is incredibly, interesting when we're sharing it with our animals. So say, for example, I want to send a taste of, I don't know, say, I love apples. I want to share with my dog what it tastes like to me. Yes, I'm sharing a communication with them. So I imagine myself, biting into a juicy apple and really crunching it in my mouth. So I've got texture and I've got the flavors of this really juicy apples. And then I send that to my animal, i.e. I just imagine, because imagination is an intention, and I send it to my animal. And then I ask my animal, I'm sending to you a food that I really enjoy the taste and texture of. Will you send me something back? So if you're lucky, it would be something pleasant to you. Okay. And if not, how amazing that is too, because there's no way you would have imagined that, so to speak. So these are great ways to play. So can you see animal communication, to begin with, is fun. It's an exploration. Don't hold definite kind of ideas in your head about what it is that you're going to receive. And then after, playing around with this, just release the connection. So where you had visualized the heart-to-heart connection, just visualize that you're taking the color or the chord or the light back to your heart, and the same with your animal, that you're also releasing the connection so that you are two individuals, so that you're not constantly still, connected energetically that way. It may not be that important if it's your own animals that you're communicating with. Obviously, for myself, working, in a professional capacity, if I don't release the connection with the animals I work with, and I've learned this from experience, they continue to chat to me even when I'm in bed at midnight. And then I realize, hang on a minute, I'm really tired. I need to shut the door. So I release it with love and thank them. So I hope that you found that really, kind of encourages you that it's not complex. I don't know if we have time to do this, but if you wanted to try, we could do this together. So we have Mia, who is a great communicator. So she will help you. So let's try one exercise together. Okay, so connect with her eyes. Okay, just look into her eyes and just start to feel a connection. Ask her permission to connect with her whether she's happy to have a communication with you. So just say it's a very simple exercise. She knows you're new to this, she says. So now imagine your connection heart to heart. So visualize this. You can do this with your eyes open or your eyes closed. So see a connection between your heart and her heart. And now pick something. So pick either an emotion or a smell or a taste or a physical sensation that you enjoy. Okay, so we'll do it so that it brings in a feeling of kind of enjoyment. So something you enjoy, and then you send it to Mia, and then just say, could you send me something back that you enjoy? And then whatever it is that you get, however subtle or even strong, however quick, or even if she sends it to you strongly, just jot it down so that maybe we can share at the end in the chat box or in the Q&A. And always trust that the animal will work harder. I always say the animal will work harder to ensure that we understand, because our intention is to connect with them. So they are really our helpers. They will make sure that the information they want to send to us, we will understand. What we must do is trust it, however random it is, and however subtle it is, or however funny it is. Okay. So just, yeah, because we're kind of in this setting, we'll do it, we have to do it a little bit quickly. So just, yeah. So once you've had that, thank her for sharing with you and release the connection. Even if you haven't got anything, just thank her for the experience and the fact that, and she thanks you for wanting to try it too. So thank you, Mia. So this is just, something that you can look at, when you're watching the replay, some of the things that, you can start asking animals when you want to play around and practice. You can ask them, show me what you're doing at this moment. What you can do is, say if somebody is with your cat, but in another room, and you take yourself, off, you can connect with your cat and ask them what they're doing in that moment, and then find out from the person who's with your cat, whether that links in or not. And yeah, I really like kind of sharing of emotions and what you can hear, smell, taste, because when you learn to share with your animal, you start to establish trust as well with them. And always keep the questions simple and direct. Okay. So if you would like to know some more, LJ has very kindly put my website in the chat box. Do have a look on the website, and there's lots of information on there, and also a more detailed explanation of what animal communication is. And so we have time for some questions and answers, I think, now.
Wonderful. Oh, and I do want to say that Jeff and I had very good experiences with Joanne, and that's what led me to saying, can we please do this, for the Natural Wellness Academy. So what I'm going to do, I do have, I felt like Mia was telling me that she likes to chase rabbits, so I don't know. She chases rabbits. Oh, okay.
And we have rabbits here. So yeah, she's a fast runner, very fast.
I'm going to open up everybody's mic. Now, if you're not planning on asking any questions, that's fine. You can, I just want to give everybody an opportunity to speak. So I'm going to unmute everybody's mic. Now, if you have a lot of background noise and you're not planning on asking a question, you may want to go ahead and remute yourself. I just want to be able to, so that everybody can be spontaneous.